Hey guys, I'm going to show you how to tie an FG knot tonight. This is a great knot if you're wanting to attach some braided line to a fluorocarbon or monofilament leader. So what you want to do, you're going to want to get a bit of tension. This line's tied to something else, but say it's going to be at the top of your rod. You want to get a bit of tension on that and start out. I like to wrap this around my pinky finger about 5 or 6 times just to give you some control so you can keep the tension on that line, okay? Then from there, you're going to get the whatever leader you want, monofilament, fluorocarbon, whatever it is. You want to have about 4 inches or so going over the braided line, okay? Now to start, what you're going to do, you're going to take one loop and wrap it over that braid on the top going towards your rod and then back around it, just like that. You'll see it starts to form a small loop. So that braided line is being looped around the fluorocarbon. From there, you're going to take the lead line and go underneath, so towards you and down. And then you'll I like to kind of push on that braid, and you see it forms loop number 2. And I kind of like to cinch it up a little bit at that point. And then basically, from there, you're going to go back around onto the top. Repeat that again. And then underneath. And you're basically going to do this about 20 times. So 10 on top, 10 on the bottom. And I like to push in on that braid each time I make a loop so that it kind of cinches down on it. See how that's moving that little knot down there? If you make this good and snug, it'll help you later with this not wanting to fall out. I think that's about knot number 8. So we'll just keep going until I get to 20. I'm not exactly counting this tonight, guys, for the video, but do about 20 of these, 10 on top, 10 on bottom. And like I said, I like to push that braid a little bit each time. There's a few other methods that people use to do this. Some of them will tighten it up a little easier without having to push on it, but the way I'm doing it, I find that giving it a little push on the braid helps to move each knot inward and get it nice and snug. I've completely lost count here, but like I said, your aim is about 20. I'll go ahead and do one more. I might have went over a little bit. That's okay. This is a thin braid I'm using tonight. So once you've got that, you're going to finish up by coming up on the bottom again. Then you're going to want to get that fluorocarbon to line up with your main line, okay? Somewhat pinch this in place, little knots. You can now release what you had on your pinky finger. What you're going to want to do, you want to do 2 half hitch knots, or little overhand knots, I think people call them. Just make sure that you have the braid and the leader in this knot. Also, I'd recommend pull it tight a little bit from your rod there. That makes this a whole lot easier to tie. And basically, you're just going to cinch that down. And what that does, that's going to lock in those knots, those little loops. Go ahead and do that a second time. And just like I said, cinch it down good and snug. Now the next part, this is the most important part of this entire knot, guys. If you don't do this right, this leader can slip straight out of here, okay? So let me I would highly recommend you put some gloves on, especially with this braided line, because it get very sharp. You have to pull this very tight. Okay, guys, I've got me some gloves on. I've wet this knot before I cinch it down. So what you want to do, I'd recommend you go ahead and get a few wrappings of that braid around your hand on the glove. Same thing on your leader. And then you're gonna pull that very, very tight. You'll start to see those little knots almost change in color almost because they're digging in. The braid is actually digging into that lead line. Like I said, you want to pull this good and tight. See how those knots are moving on there? Don't break your line, but pull it just about a little before that. Like, don't get it too hard and break it, but see how those knots have all cinched in? So that's the most important part, guys. If that doesn't dig in well, this knot will fail on you. Now, so after we've done that, we've tightened everything down, we're gonna tie a couple of additional half hitch knots on here. I like to do 4 at this point. So, and then make sure, like I said, get your braid and get your monofilament in there. Make sure they're in the knot. I've got a little bit too much braid here. This is a little tough with this long of a piece, but that's fine. Yeah, I like to tie 4 here, and if you want to alternate and do 1 from the top, a couple from the bottom, that's fine. So whatever you want to do on that, but so get about. Some people just do 2, but I like to do 4 on there to kind of hold that fluorocarbon piece underneath the braid a little more upright. Okay, so we've got that. All right. Now, from here, you're going to go ahead and trim off your tag line on the fluorocarbon. A lot of folks will tell you get that as close as possible. That does make it go through the eyes on your reel better if you get it very, very close. I, however, like to leave about 1/4 of an inch. I'll tell you why here in a little bit. So you can see I've got a little tiny bit. Can you see that? It's hard to zoom in on it, isn't it? There's a little tiny bit of that fluorocarbon on top. Now, what I'd recommend at this point, I'm going to go ahead and throw my gloves on. This is a really thin braid I'm working with here, so I don't want to cut myself. I snug it up a little bit more right here, and you'll see that little tiny 1/4 inch lead that you left, you'll see it in there. If that moves out of place, you've probably got a bad knot, guys. So cinch that up a little bit right there, and that's kind of how I like to tell. So if that thing stays in place, you've probably got a good knot. If that thing starts to slip and move down, you might have a bad knot. So we've re-cinched it, we've clipped our fluorocarbon lead. You're gonna wanna finalize this with about 4 or 5 additional half-hitch knots, okay? So just do that, about 4 or 5 of those. Just make sure everything's nice and clean on there. Some people like to loop it around a whole bunch and whatever. You can do that if you want. I generally I don't really like the feel of the knots going through the rod guide, so I normally will leave this a little bit below and just get myself 2 or 3 feet of leader on there. That way I don't have to reel it through, because I just don't like that feeling. But so that's all you got to do there. So that's basically your finished knot. So we're going to want to trim off this tag line. I'll show you another little trick here. So I'm trimming that off a little bit longer than what you'd want. And this is something I saw online that I am a fan of. So this is one additional step you don't have to do. You can just trim that, but I'm going to do it for you guys tonight. You'll want to get a lighter, and you're going to shrivel up a little bit of this remaining braid by burning it. Use some pliers or something with this if you have to. This is a little mini torch. Not the best for this, but it'll work. All right. So that is a finished FG knot, guys. I didn't burn that close enough. I should have burnt it a little bit more, but that's okay though. You can see what it would do there. This is a very, very strong knot if tied properly, okay? So I hope that helps some of you guys out. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. But the biggest thing about this, when you're wrapping those loops, get them good and tight. Second biggest thing, when you go to cinch those knots, make sure all of these little things, you'll see them almost change color because the braid's digging into the line. Take care, guys.